Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. One day, in a small country, the Queen has a baby. Everyone is very happy. The baby has got pink cheeks and black hair. Her skin is very white. So the King and Queen say, "Let's call her Snow White." But Snow White's mother gets ill and dies. The King is very sad. "I must find a new mother for Snow White," he says. A year later, he marries a new queen. But the new queen is not a good woman. She doesn't love Snow White. The queen wants to be the most beautiful woman in the world. Every day, she asks her magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror, who is the most beautiful woman in the world?" The mirror says, "You are, dear queen." Now Snow White is 13 years old. She's very beautiful. One day the queen asks her magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror, who is the most beautiful woman in the world?" The mirror says, "Snow White is the most beautiful woman in the world." The queen is very angry. She speaks to a hunter. "You must kill Snow White," she says. "Take her into the forest. Then bring me her heart." The hunter takes Snow White into the forest, but he doesn't want to kill her. "Go away," he says. "Run into the forest. Don't come back. The queen wants to kill you." Snow White is very afraid and she runs away. The hunter kills an animal and he takes its heart to the queen. When she sees the heart, she is very happy. "The hunter killed Snow White," she says. "Now I am the most beautiful woman in the world." In the forest, Snow White runs and runs. She is lost. "Where am I?" she cries. Then she sees a little house. She goes into the house and she sees 7 little plates on the table and 7 little chairs. She also sees 7 little beds in the bedroom. Snow White is tired and hungry. She eats some food from a plate and she drinks some water from a cup. Then she goes to sleep in the biggest bed. 7 dwarfs live in the house. Every day they dig to find gold and at night they come back to the house. But tonight something is different. "Where is my dinner?" asked the first dwarf. "Where is my drink?" asked the second dwarf. "Who is in my bed?" asked the third dwarf. Snow White wakes up and she sees the 7 dwarfs. They are smiling and Snow White isn't afraid. She tells them about the bad queen and the hunter. The dwarfs say, "You mustn't go back to the palace. You must stay here with us." "Oh, thank you," says Snow White. "I will cook and clean for you. You will be happy." At the palace, the queen is very happy. She thinks Snow White is dead. One morning she asks her magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror, "Who is the most beautiful woman in the world?" The mirror says, "Snow White is the most beautiful woman in the world. She lives in the forest. She lives with 7 dwarfs in a little house. She is happy." The queen is very angry. "What? Snow White?" she shouts. "Snow White is alive? I will go into the forest. I must find her. I must kill her." The queen thinks. Then she has an idea. "I can be an old woman," she says. "I will wear old clothes." The queen wears old clothes and goes into the forest. The queen finds Snow White in the little house. "Hello, beautiful girl," she says. "Look at this lovely red apple. It is very tasty. Come and eat it." Snow White wants the apple. The apple looks very tasty. Snow White takes the apple and she bites it, but then she falls down. There is poison in the apple. The queen kills Snow White with the poison. The queen laughs. "I killed her," she shouts. The 7 dwarfs are digging for gold. They hear the queen and they run to the house. "Snow White!" they shout, but Snow White doesn't speak. She is dead. The 7 dwarfs are very sad. They are crying. They put Snow White in a beautiful glass coffin. All the animals in the forest come to see Snow White. They are crying. They are very sad. "Snow White is very beautiful," says a dwarf. One day a prince comes into the forest. He sees Snow White. "She is very beautiful," he says. "I want to take her to my palace. I can't live without her." The 7 dwarfs say that he can take Snow White to his palace. They lift the coffin to give it to the prince, but a dwarf falls down and the glass coffin breaks. Snow White falls onto the ground. The poisoned apple comes out of her mouth and Snow White wakes up. She opens her eyes and sees the dwarfs and the prince. Everyone is happy again. The birds are singing and the dwarfs are dancing. The prince says, "My beautiful Snow White, will you marry me?" "Yes, I will," says Snow White. The bad queen is in her palace. She asks her magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror, who is the most beautiful woman in the world?" The mirror says Snow White is the most beautiful woman in the world. She is happy. She will marry the prince. The queen is very angry. She breaks the mirror and she runs away from the palace. Snow White marries the prince and they are very happy.